If you get in those 5 to 7 seconds, if there's a hook, if there's something in those 5 to 7 seconds that grabs my attention, then I read the whole thing. If there's not something in the top third of the resume that grabs my attention, it goes to the other pile.
This is part 2 of Food Grad's 3-part HR mini-series built specifically for students entering the food and beverage industry, with support from DeLacy Executive Recruitment. In this episode, I sat down with Steve McIntyre, Vice President of People and Culture at Fine Choice Foods.
Somebody who somehow conveys to the interviewer that this person knows how to get things done. This person is demonstrating the competencies or the behaviors that align with people who are winners in our organization.
He shares how hiring managers actually review resumes, common interview mistakes that students make, and what helps candidates stand out beyond technical skills. Let's dive into the basics and hear from Steve.
My name's Steve McIntyre. I'm the Vice President of People and Culture at a company called Fine Choice Foods, where we manufacture and sell fine, high-quality Chinese and Asian-inspired dim sum products.
Thank you so much, Steve, for sitting down with me. I'm so looking forward to hearing your insights and sharing that with students. I know this is going to be such a great episode because everyone's always asking these questions. So to hear from the person who is involved in doing the hiring, I know there's going to be a lot of great insights. So let's start off with you before we get into the job insights. So tell us about your food job and what does a typical week look like for you?
The way I want to respond to this question is say there's no typical work week because Fine Choice Foods is a high growth company. And so when I answer this question, I answer through the lens of what Fine Choice Foods is doing. And Fine Choice Foods is in a period of really ambitious growth and expansion, not only across Canada, but also very much focused on US expansion over the last couple of years. And so high growth company usually means there's a lot going on. We start off our weeks Monday morning. My team gets together for a 45-minute huddle, which really is just sort of, hey, what happened over the weekend? Anything that we need to be focused on? Otherwise, what are our priorities for the week? And everybody's got their own priorities. We just get aligned on that, and then we get cracking. Usually, we're very much focused on recruiting and onboarding. A high growth company, there's new roles, there's new responsibilities, there's roles that didn't exist last week or last year that we need to fill. We're partnering with hiring managers, securing sort of production, maintenance, quality assurance, and leadership talent in a competitive market. And onboarding is especially critical in our business, where we need to have strong orientations and then sort of on the subsequent days, continuous training and onboarding so that people feel comfortable and supported in their new role and that they understand the clear expectations of the organization regarding safety, quality, etc. At the same time, one of the focuses of HR is to continuously strengthen the organization's structure. And as our business grows, we need to refine our informal practices into policies and procedures. And as I often say to my team, our number one focus in a growing organization is to provide that structure without causing friction, which sometimes can be a little bit of a balancing act.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It really helps put into perspective that high growth and what that actually means for a company that's growing and what you're looking for. And, again, let's put it into perspective. Tell me a little bit more about like the products that you have. Just paint a picture of the company you work for, just to tie that together.
Yeah, so Fine Choice Foods was a family-founded organization by the Louis family back in 1986. And immigrant family coming to Canada, scrappy, trying to figure out how are they going to secure their fortune in Canada. And so they went with manufacturing dim sum products. So they made all manner of things long before my time. But they were making wontons and they were making noodles and soups, gyoza, pot stickers, and spring rolls. And really, spring rolls was sort of their claim to fame. That was what really sort of launched the business. And then gyozas came on after that. And then everything else was sort of an extension. Fast forward to about 7 years ago, the family decided to retire, or the founders decided to retire, that is. and they sold the business. We're now owned by Swander Pace, a private equity firm out of the US. And we've reduced the number of SKUs that we produce and offer to the market these days. And that was more about focusing on what are we really good at, what sells really well, what's profitable. And we're actually in the process now of expanding that SKU set. So while primarily we're known for spring rolls and gyoza, and multiple flavors and variations of those, we're now starting to expand into other products. We recently launched bao buns, which are fantastic, and I love them a little bit too much, to be honest. And then there's some other exciting products that are coming out this year as well.
And is it a multi-facility organization? Is it just the one manufacturing plant, or are there multiple?
Yeah, we've got two manufacturing facilities today, both conveniently in Richmond, which is nice for
Oh,
me. The We have a plant on Fraserwood Way, and we have a plant on Number Six Road. We focused on maximizing the capacity of the Fraserwood plant, but then as we knew the strategy was to expand into the US, we knew that we were going to need additional capacity. And for that, we chose to develop or build a new plant. It was done during COVID times, and so we weren't sure sort of what the restrictions were going to be, and so we made it local in Richmond. So yeah, two manufacturing facilities producing all of our products currently out of Richmond, BC.
very cool. Well, thank you for painting that picture. So I want to go one more question towards you before we start getting into some great advice, is just to learn a little bit more about you and HR. Is your job something that you just do hiring? Does it involve many other things like compensation packages? I just want to get a better picture of just like what does your HR role look like?
Yeah, and if it's okay with you, Veronica, I'm going to tell a bit of a story to some degree because I think it's an important piece of this. I started off in the food manufacturing business as a maintenance electrician. A
Okay.
friend of mine tipped me off that there was a job, and I thought, oh, that's a great job for me because it's indoors. Food manufacturing seems very safe and secure, less prone to economic sort of issues like construction was back in the day. And so I took the job as a maintenance electrician. I involved myself pretty quickly in the safety committee when I joined the company that I joined at the time. It was a poultry producer. And through that, an opportunity presented itself where I was offered the chance to become a full-time health and safety coordinator. And I seized that opportunity. Health and safety in that company reported into HR. I started learning HR by osmosis and expressed more and more curiosity and interest in that kind of work. And that's ultimately what allowed me the opportunity to get into HR. And so I share that because back in the day, I used to think that that was a pretty unique career path. And I suppose to some degree it is, but it's not terribly unusual in the food manufacturing business, and particularly in what I would call small to medium size organizations, companies between 100 to 500 employees, sort of fit that small to medium, at least for the purposes of this story. Those companies, when they're in growth mode, they have new needs every couple of weeks as the business expands and there are new challenges to be overcome. They often look internally, just instinctively, they look internally to say, who can help me with this? Can Veronica help me with this? What's Veronica's undergrad? Oh yeah, Veronica's undergrad is food science. Maybe she knows something about this. Steve's background is in the trades. Maybe Steve knows how to fix this machine. And so it leads to these opportunities. And so, that's going to form sort of the basis of how I respond to a lot of the questions today. But yeah, more directly to your question about HR work, yes, we work on compensation. We work on presenting competitive offers for candidates. We do a lot of coaching. We do a lot of coaching of managers and supervisors in sort of helping them to follow best practices and how we're relating with employees, how we're dealing with issues. And there's just all manner of things that HR sort of gets their hands into, especially in a business like Fine Choice Foods.
I was so happy when you answered the question the way you did, because when I was looking at your LinkedIn prepping for the show, I saw that like the mechanical sorry, not mechanical, the mechanic, I apologize, to the job title you just mentioned. I was like, please, he has to tell me that story, because I don't know how he got from here to here. And I love that you've shared that, because it is something that I've come across in the food industry, that there is this lateral movement and you can really make a career. I've heard about QA specialists who've done the health and safety. I've heard back and forth between it. And I really love that you've pointed out when that happens, because I think it shows that this opportunity in this industry, there's so many, and getting it just because you get in with like a food science degree, or if you get in with a chemistry, if you get into English, there's opportunities for a lot of different things. So happy that you shared that.
Yeah, I'm going to let you in on a little secret.
Okay.
It's my deep suspicion that a lot of young people go into food science or food technology not necessarily because they seek a lifelong career testing food for quality samples. It's probably often because those young people are pretty good at science and they really like food, and they feel that there's a marriage there, that it'll be interesting for them because they haven't really yet made up their mind what they want to study. And the more I talk to young people and students about that, the more I see them nodding yeah and saying, yeah, that's me actually. And that's cool, because this is really just how you're going to open your door of opportunity into the food industry. You can move into health and safety. You can move into finance or marketing or research and development. And I would point no further than within our very company. Our CEO started off his first job was in quality assurance. Our director of operations started off in quality assurance. And I look at quality assurance grads or food science, food tech grads as being a main talent pipeline into our organization. This is where we're getting university graduates at a young stage into our organization with eyes wide open. And yeah, I want them focused on food safety and quality assurance for the first few years, but there's no reason they can't expand on that and take it somewhere else.
Well, let's build on that in terms of your company, in terms of opportunities. Do you have supports like co-op positions? Do you just only hire out of graduation? How are ways that students and new grads getting, hired into your company?
Yeah, we're not big enough to have formal co-op positions that, cycle around twice a year or every year or what have you. Things we've done specifically for food science and food technology programs is we've partnered actively with BCIT over the past number of years here in the Vancouver area. And just because I know some of the faculty there, we've hosted them so they come annually for a plant tour, so that they get to actually, leave the campus and get into an actual manufacturing facility to see what's actually happening. How does it actually show up in real life? And then what we like to do in addition to that is do a presentation where maybe we bring in some QA technologists, some R&D people, maybe an HR person to just talk about what are the opportunities and pathways that open up once you get in. That's been helpful in sort of establishing Fine Choice Foods as sort of front of mind for second, third year students. We've also tried this with UBC and other post-secondary institutions. Not so much on the co-op side of things, just because our focus is on growth, and so we're not really. I don't think that we would do a great job of hosting a structured co-op project kind of initiative.
Well, even for you to have the opportunity for students to go and check out the facility, talk to individuals, that's such a great opportunity, because I feel so many even don't. There's a lot of closed doors sometimes in the food industry where, they want people to come in, but they might not necessarily do a tour. And so getting that experience, I know when I think a long, long time ago, I did like a chocolate tour, and it was so cool to see what was going on in the facility. And I think that also helped me with my journey coming in. But shifting the conversation, I think it's a great opportunity to start talking about graduates and who you do hire. So it sounds like you're hiring students out of these programs. How do you look at entry-level resumes? Maybe they don't have a co-op position. What makes somebody stand out?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a difficult one to answer because I feel, I have some go-tos, but I feel it's subjective. There's not one magic recipe to the perfect resume or the perfect cover letter or what have you. But in thinking about this question, in preparing for this question, I thought, well, the first thing I'd want an applicant to know is that when they apply to a job that we post, we receive somewhere between 200 and 400 applicants. And we don't use AI. I don't frankly know anybody who uses AI to screen resumes. That technology may come, but for now, we're reading them. And so that's a manual process. And the truth of the matter is, I don't have time to read 300 resumes or applications. So on average, we probably spend somewhere between 5 to 7 seconds scanning a resume. And if something doesn't pop out, if something compelling or interesting doesn't catch our immediate attention, we move to the next one. And that might be hurtful for people to understand, but I want them to understand the truth because that's really how it goes down. So the question that naturally follows, Veronica, I'm sure, is, so what's compelling? What catches your interest, Steve?
Yeah.
And then, so this is where perhaps it's a little bit subjective. For me, first and foremost, that top end of the resume needs to be your name and a summary, a personal summary or a personal statement. And that's where it's unique to each person, right? Veronica's might say, I'm an energetic and dedicated food science grad who is passionate about food. I also happen to have an Instagram channel devoted to food. That's interesting. Somebody else's might say, my future ambition is to run a food manufacturing company, or I'm an aspiring entrepreneur who has ideas about food products or whatever. Those are things that reach out and sort of say, this is different from the others. We get so many resumes that I think are drafted so that they impress the parents or they impress the teachers. Because it always starts off with, here's all the educational achievements I've got in my background. Here's the names of the schools I went to. And frankly, there's a time and a place for that, but it's not at the top of the resume.
I know that you mentioned that it is subjective, so other hiring managers might look at it differently. But what I like about that is it really does give you the opportunity to be unique in your own way. And it might not necessarily fit, well, I did this in this course, but I did this on the side. It's not an actual job. It wasn't a co-op opportunity. It was something that I created myself, or I'm unique in my views. I like that gives you an opportunity to stand out where you might not have that experience from school. I think I really like that.
Yeah. I'll tell you something else. I've gotten to the point where I read into, so many times, students come to us, they apply. I accept that they're not going to have experience. And if they do, it's going to be minimal. So I've gotten to a point where I read into other things in their resume to extrapolate, do they have transferable experiences and skills? And so I got a resume recently from a person who said, my 2 years of serving experience at this restaurant has equipped me with adaptability, a sense of urgency, effective listening skills, and service recovery. And I thought, my God, that just absolutely fits hand in glove with what we kind of look for in those critical competencies. And I couldn't interview that person fast enough.
So it also goes to show outside of the food industry experience is also important. It was a server, and I know that's the restaurant industry, and it is adjacent to food, but it's those adaptability skills, those transferable skills that
Yeah,
you're looking for.
absolutely.
And would you also say there's any, maybe we've already touched upon it, but well, sorry, I take it back. You did mention that there is some mistakes about talking about the education piece, like a list. You don't really necessarily want to see that up in front.
Yeah, it doesn't add any value. It doesn't help me develop an interest in the person because ultimately hiring decisions are made on two or three sort of core components. Do I believe the person can do the job? Do I believe the person is qualified for the job, has the requisite skills? And do I believe I'm going to enjoy working with this person? And again, that might be tough truth for some people to hear, but that's kind of what it is. And so that for me, listing your educational stuff at the top is not the most paramount consideration. For me, the most paramount consideration is, can the person do the work, and will I enjoy working with this person? That's what comes across in that personal summary, right?
And sorry, you touched upon something, will I like to work with this person? How do you signal that you're someone who fits in that like company culture, or you would be well suited for it through a resume? Or is that through a cover letter? Is it just through the interview? Ooh, that's another good question, is cover letters, the importance of them. So I'll make it a two-part question. What is the importance of cover letters to you? And how do you signal on your resume that you would be a good fit?
Let's deal with cover letters first, Veronica. Save your time. Cover letters are like dinosaurs. First and foremost, if I only have 5 to 7 seconds to scan your resume, and on top of that is a cover letter, that's another distraction. So it oftentimes doesn't even get read. And another tip is, and this comes to mistakes that we commonly see on resumes, another document is another opportunity to make mistakes. And so whereas I see some common mistakes on resumes, on cover letters all have to be personalized to the company you're sending it to and the job title that you're applying to. And that is the most common mistake on cover letters. And that's an instant turnoff, right?
Okay, that's interesting to hear. So, out of curiosity, is it more of a preference for you, or have you heard of other, maybe those in the industry that they enjoy cover letters?
I've definitely heard from other recruiters, other HR professionals in my industry that they don't place any value on cover letters. I suppose I can see a place for it in more senior roles where you're trying to establish maybe more of what the sort of value add is that you bring to a more senior role that's perhaps more strategically focused. But when we're talking about entry level, it doesn't really serve a purpose. And as I say, it just introduces an additional opportunity to make mistakes that are going to land you on the do not call pile.
And speaking about senior, so those that are applying to the jobs are entry level. So like you said, they don't tend to have as much experience. Do you think there's a place to include things like clubs necessarily? Like it might be totally out of left, I don't know, maybe like they're in their youth group, for example, as a club, or they're doing like soccer club. Would that be a benefit to put on a resume?
It's crucial because it gives us something else to talk about, to understand where you might have developed some skills, gained some experiences that are transferable, that are relatable to the work that we have for the candidate. I like to see that, and in fact, I might lean into that to say, tell me about how your sailing club has equipped you with team building skills, right? That instantly makes the candidate more comfortable because they've got a basis of understanding that they enjoyed sailing, they were good at sailing, they can talk about sailing, where they, to ask how they do team building in a workplace setting, if they don't have that experience, you're just causing anxiety.
So it goes to show it's good to be a whole person that's not just only studies and that you actually go out and enjoy life, but also that can be a way to be good in work as well.
Yes, and also, Veronica, also adds to the will I enjoy working with this person? Hey, Veronica's into sailing. I like sailing. That's interesting, right?
Okay, so that plays into that idea, like how can you somewhat figure out if I would like to work with this person, and if maybe there's a hobby, there's more of a likelihood that you might like each other.
Yeah, and we're not looking for best friends. What we're looking for is commonality. Is this somebody I could sit and eat my lunch with? Is this somebody who I could share some conversation with? Is this somebody who I'm going to feel an affinity with working alongside?
Wow, there's so much that a resume can. I know you say you go over it very quickly, but it does sound like there is more to a resume that it can reveal about you besides just your technical skills that you can do.
Yeah, yeah. If you get in those 5 to 7 seconds, if there's a hook, if there's something in those 5 to 7 seconds that grabs my attention, then I read the whole thing. If there's not something in the top third of the resume that grabs my attention, it goes to the other pile.
Well, I have to also though ask about technical skills because we've been kind of talking about the complementary skills, and I know that you need to be adaptable in the food industry. You need to be able to communicate. But when it comes to the hands-on technical skills, if you are doing quality assurance and you're doing a microbiology job, well, you need to know microbiology. Those skills would be important, obviously, to include on a resume. How should I put this? How would someone articulate them? Just straightforward? What's the best way to show that?
Yeah, those questions will definitely get asked in the interview. Just because you graduated from University of Guelph food science program doesn't mean that you graduated at the top of the class and you understood everything that was taught. So there will be questions to ask, how you do different types of sampling or testing and what your knowledge is of some of the equipment or the tools are that we use. And for the most part, they're not trick questions and they're not tough questions. It's just to hear, can you relate with what we're talking about, and have you touched it? Have you used it? Can you speak to that? We know that we're going to be doing teaching in the early days of your employment, but we want to establish there's at least a foundation of shared experience there to the technical side of things.
Okay, so still include those bullet points on your resume, but they will be expanded upon in the interview. Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's actually a perfect transition to start talking about interviews, because that is the next step after you get your resume. You've got the hook. You're like, I'm interested in this person. Let's talk about the interview process. What would signal to you that this is someone who's going to succeed in the role that you're hiring for?
It may sound old-fashioned, but I think it's still true. Showing up on time, and on time means 10 minutes early. Somebody who leans forward in their seat, and I mean that literally, somebody who demonstrates an interest and an energy, and who comes across genuinely eager about the conversation and the potential to work together. Somebody who somehow conveys to the interviewer that this person knows how to get things done. This person is demonstrating the competencies or the behaviors that align with people who are winners in our organization.
Okay, so the fundamentals are always important, because I know when you go into the workplace, you have to get there 10 minutes, 15 minutes early, get your gear on, be ready for the shift if you start at 8 a.m., you should be ready to go on the floor at 8 a.m. So that's a good signal as well.
That's exactly right.
And then I guess you just, maybe it's from your own experience, you've been working for a while. How can someone show that they're interested in the role, but a lot of times someone can get really nervous, which can kind of overshoot their thinking in a situation. Do you have any suggestions to help ease that anxiety or the nerves that might come when you come to the interview?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to help an applicant manage their own stress or nervousness or anxiety coming in. Typically, my team is trained that, hey, we want to put people at ease, right? An interview should never be like a surprise test. An interview should be, yeah, it's not a pop quiz. It really should be an opportunity to help a person shine. It really should be an opportunity to allow a person to represent their best self. And so, what I coach my team to do is bring the person into the interview room alone, get them comfortable in the setting, let them choose a seat to sit in, let them breathe the air for a few minutes, leave them alone for a few minutes, offer them a washroom, offer them a water, and then explain to them that you'll be back in a couple of minutes with the hiring manager. And oftentimes, if I figure, if I'm looking at interviewing Veronica and I go, gosh, she looks like she might be a little nervous, I'll hand you a pen, so that you've got something to fidget with in your hand. So that tends to help get rid of the shakes. So a tip to people is always bring yourself a pen and a pad of paper or a notebook or something, because two things. One, it helps to sort of manage your hands in the interview process, so you don't have the shakes and you're not nervous and you're not kneading your hands and getting all sweaty. And secondly, it really conveys to the interviewer that, hey, this person came and they're taking this seriously. They're taking notes. They're scribbling down sort of comments or whatever. So I think that works well.
I love that tip. As a obsessive nail biter, unfortunately, I wish that was not the case, but it is indeed it when I am nervous. Reminding myself to bring a pen is always a good thing. That it's nice to hear that it's not, you're coming from a place of you want to hire the best people, but you're not trying to get someone like, you're not trying to be like, gotcha, I'm trying to make you uncomfortable. You're just trying to have a conversation and see if this works mutually for best. It's not supposed to be, like you said, a surprise test to make you feel uncomfortable.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And thinking more about interviews, are there some favorite questions that you like to ask? Like, I know situational questions are very, tend to be something that's asked a lot. Like, what would you do in this situation? Is that something that you lean upon? Is there something that you wish that maybe there's mistakes that you notice someone's coming in now that they're answering the questions? So I guess my two questions would be, are there common mistakes that you see interviewees doing throughout the interview? And what are some of your favorite questions, or I guess, what are some of your favorite questions to use for an interviewee?
Yeah. So I'll answer in reverse sequence, I think. So common sort of red flags or things that stand out about interview that are not impressive to me, converse to what should they do showing up on time. People who show up late. I get it. It happens sometimes and it's unavoidable, but 10 minutes early is ideal. But candidates who come with low energy, and don't ask any questions about the business. If there's one thing I could convey to people to say, please have at least two questions that you've written down for yourself beforehand. And maybe even during the interview, you note down one or two more questions that come up through the conversation. But please ask a couple of questions, because if you don't ask any questions, the interviewer gets the impression that you're not really interested, that you either feel like you already know everything or you're not really interested, and neither one of those is a very favorable impression to leave on the interviewer.
Yeah, that's a good point, as well as to always have questions. And, if you're going to be going to this company to work for them, you want to show that you're interested in knowing, because you're not always going to get every piece of information you need to know from a job description or from the website. A lot of companies, they put, what it's like working there, like the company culture, but you can't get it all online. So being able to speak directly to those that are answering that that can give you a signal to know if you want to work there as well, because this is a good time to see if it fits you, and maybe it won't.
Yeah. Yeah. And for candidates who want to address that, for candidates who want to show up well.
Okay.
A lot of people struggle with culture. Like, how do I identify culture? What is the culture of this company I'm going to? And frankly, I think the word culture is probably slightly overused or often misinterpreted. It's not so much about vibe of the workplace. It's more about how people show up in environments that require dedication, teamwork, and resilience. And so for us, if you want to understand our culture, I'd say go look at our website and read and absorb the our team page and look at the pictures of the people that we put up on there. Now, this is where companies show up very individually, right? This is sort of like we go back to the resume about something compelling, something interesting, something personal. The company's website is also very personal to that company. So ours is going to be very different than, say, Bimbo Bakeries or Kraft Heinz or what have you. The other thing you can do is follow or read some of their LinkedIn posts. What are they talking about? How do they talk about it? What press releases can you find? Can you find any communication from the CEO that talks about priorities? Are they celebrating team achievements? Are they celebrating just sort of sales wins? Are they highlighting individuals within the organization? That really gives you a sense of the type of team that you might be wanting to join. And that also gives you material to talk about in the interview. It's always impressive to me if I'm interviewing somebody and they say, I saw on your website where it says this, or I was reading the LinkedIn post from your CEO and he said that, or she said this. That demonstrates to me that this person is going above and beyond trying to research and learn more about us. And it causes me to want to lean in and learn more about them.
And it shows it's a skill that you can show that you don't need to have the work experience. It's showing that you've gone above and beyond. And when you come into this role, you're going to be looking ahead. You're trying to find ways that you can talk to someone. You can find more interest. You're someone who likes to ask questions. So it sounds like it's a nice compliment if you also lack experience, but as well, it sounds like it's something that you'd use throughout your whole career.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, so Veronica, you also asked me about, sort of favorite questions that I like to ask in an interview. I don't know if I actually have a favorite question or favorite questions. But I can tell you that I'm looking to understand the intellectual capacity and the motivations of the person that I'm sitting with. And so those are the subjects that are favorites of mine. So I will definitely ask questions that help me to understand, does the candidate have the ability to demonstrate initiative? Can they give me examples of places or times in their past where they've used their own initiative to solve a problem? And it doesn't have to be, solving a major problem or something significant. I just need somebody who can demonstrate that I know what initiative means. Here's how it shows up in my life. Here's an example of where I've used it. Because I want that person to recognize that that's an important consideration for us. And then the other one is, and I harp on this all the time, intellectual curiosity. I want people who are intellectually curious joining our business. And so who is that and what does that look like? It's people who are constantly asking, well, why is it like this? Or why does that happen? What's happening upstream that's leading to this outcome? What's happening downstream as a result of my inputs? How could I make this better, faster, leaner, safer, etc.? Those are the types of people that they're just naturally curious within sort of the confines of the business context to say, why is it this way and what can I do about this? Those kinds of people I got all day for.
Well, thank you for taking that question and running with it, because that was, I think, where I was trying to go with it, because I feel like you pulling out like your list of favorite questions, I was really looking for thinking about how someone prepares for the interview. You know, they got the resume, now they're at the interview. I know I've been told in the past, like, have the SMART goals, or I think it's the STAR method, part of me. It's the where, you know, have the situation, have what you did, how the tasks that you accomplished, and it eludes me the full acronym right now. Maybe it's because I'm not applying for jobs recently. But throughout the interview, you want to see someone, how they'll fit in, how they think. You're trying to see their different situations that they can be in. So I come back to it. Thank you for taking the question away and running with it.
No problem.
And so, okay, so it sounds like, you know, look at the different skills you have, figure out how you can have a story if that comes up in the interview, how you can speak to something. Be sure to be able to ask questions to show you're curious, but as well to learn more about the company and show your interest. Is there any other tips that maybe we haven't covered from the resume perspective and the interview perspective that I might have missed that you wanted to speak upon?
Don't let Indeed create your resume. Don't let a bot create your resume. Create your own resume, and don't be afraid to let the individual shine, and make that in the top third of it.
That's good advice. I think people need to hear that, because I feel right now the opposite is to use find some kind of template and then sorry, I take it back. I shouldn't be saying that. Sorry. I think that's a really good piece of advice, to really personalize it. You know, it's your chance to put yourself in the world, and you want to be able to present how you want to be presented. So use that as an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fine to use a template, but then customize it. So if Microsoft provides you a template and you want to add a splash of color by creating some orange lines on it, I think that's fantastic. If you want to reformat it slightly to put sort of a personal summary statement at the top, I think that's even better.
That's really good advice to know as well. Templates work. And I guess the other question I wanted to ask is, like, sometimes it's a struggle for someone to find a job right out of school. You know, I hear people applying for sometimes hundreds, which is crazy to me, of jobs. But let's just say, you know, someone's struggling to find a job right away. What do you think they should be doing in that time as they're applying for jobs to maybe keep the momentum and stay competitive when they haven't found that first job?
Yeah, I posted something on LinkedIn recently. It is a terrible time to be looking for work. It's a tough job market right now, in a lot of roles, and certainly in our industry, and that's obvious to me by the number of applicants we get to the jobs that we post. So there's that it's a tough job market. And then there's also this, the whole ghosting thing, where employers aren't responding to applicants, and applicants are becoming irritated and greatly discouraged by that. And that's real. And I can empathize with that. And it's not necessarily that employers are cold-hearted and don't care. But when I talk about, you know, receiving 200 to 400 applicants to a role, we simply don't have time to respond to everybody. And so, yes, those 400 applicants are going to get an automated response from most companies. And a very small subset is going to get a personalized response because for some reason we've shown an interest in their application, and now we want to engage in further discussion. And so I feel empathy for those 350 that didn't get any sort of real response. And they've applied for a dozen jobs perhaps, or 20 jobs, and they've gotten silence on all 20. There's no absolute way of getting around that. But I would say, don't allow yourself to be invisible. If the jobs that you're applying to are within commutable distance of your home, go to the company. go show up at reception and say, hey, I'm here to follow up. I put in an application a week ago, or what have you. Or reach out to somebody from the company on LinkedIn and say, hey, I would just like to follow up on something. See if there's somebody you know that works at that business who could give you some inside scoop, or perhaps an introduction to somebody. Be visible. Try and make yourself visible in some way. Again, that sort of differentiates yourself.
That's really good advice. And hearing be visible. I think that's a really good phrase right there, is to find ways to be visible and find different, like, put yourself out there, try different things. You never know what's going to be the thing that maybe gets you that job. It sounds like from this conversation, it could be, well, that one sentence that stood out that you did sailing, as you mentioned, that's what gets you in. But then you can talk about your technical skills. It's about trying and exploring different ways. So it's really good to hear that advice and make yourself visible.
Yeah, and here's another one, Veronica, that I had made a note of. It used to be, back in the old days when I applied for jobs, that you literally showed up at reception with a resume in your hand, and you had a dress shirt on or a jacket or whatever, and you're trying to make your best impression. Well, in this generation, you don't necessarily show up at the front door, but you can absolutely show up on social media. And so as an example, I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Imagine a scenario where a young person who's just graduated from their food technology program at University of Guelph makes a comment on something I've posted, and they find a way to draw attention to themselves by saying, I like this post, or I see how this post relates to something going on within your company. That's something I read. That's something I'm focused on. And if that's how you show up at the front door, then I would encourage people to do that. I've had examples where people have commented on our CEO's posts on LinkedIn, and he literally sends me a note and says, hey, did you see this person? Well, I would never have seen that person if I was just sifting through 400 resumes.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's good to know. And it's also, you're more likely to be visible on LinkedIn because a lot of the times, like, the people on LinkedIn aren't getting like 10,000 comments like a celebrity. They're maybe getting 3 or 5, or sometimes you get 100, but that visibility, and it's something that's accessible for most people.
That's exactly right.
Ooh, okay. Well, I think that might be a good place to stop. I think that we've throughout our conversation, we've covered about who you are, about your company. We've talked about the different, like, what can you do in a resume to stand out, interviews, what to do when you're waiting off. Is there anything, Steve, is there any pieces of advice, like a whole piece of advice you want to give students that are looking to go into the food and beverage industry as we leave off the conversation?
No, I feel comfortable that we've covered all the bases that you had sort of laid out for us, Veronica. But I'm really thankful for the time that you've given me, the opportunity to be here and speak with you, and hopefully influence some people who are out there looking for jobs today or will be shortly in the future.